We left off class today kind of in the middle of this problem, unfortunately. So I'm going to go back through it. You may be watching this video sometime after we ended class. So we have that an arrow is shot from a height of 6 feet straight upward with an initial speed of 20 feet per second. The arrow's height h in feet above the ground after t seconds is h equals negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 6. And so I talked about the 20 is coming from that initial speed. The 6 is that initial height. The negative 16 I didn't talk about. That actually comes from gravity. So it's negative because gravity is pulling down on the arrow. But anyway, so part A, when will the arrow be 8 feet above the ground? So we're setting this formula equal to 8 in a way. We're putting the 8 in for h. And we're solving for t to find that answer to when. So then once you do that, you want to clean up this equation as much as possible just to make it less likely that you'll make a mistake. So if the numbers can be a little smaller, maybe avoid some negative signs, that can usually be helpful. At the very least, you have to get all your terms on one side, though, so that you can have an A, B, and C. So we did that, and we ended up getting to 8t squared minus 10t plus 1 equals 0, once we kind of simplified as much as we could. And then plugged into our quadratic equation for the A, B, and C. So, of course, A is 8, B is negative 10, C is 1. And so we got to here. And I had forgotten to put in the directions that we are actually going to... Oh, stop it. Man. Okay. Hello. We are actually, I'm sorry, I should restart this video. Oh well, here it goes. Okay. Going to give our final answer as a decimal, and we're just going to round to the 10th place. All right. So let's clean this guy up. So we'll have t equals 10 plus or minus square root. And absolutely feel free to use a calculator to help you with all of this stuff. So I think this is going to be 100 minus 32. I think it's a 68 over 16. And you could simplify that square root, but since we don't need to give an exact form for our final answer, that's just kind of creating busy work for yourself. So we're just going to put this in the calculator. Of course, you don't want to put plus or minus. There's no way to do that, and then you're trying to find two different numbers at the same time. So we're going to put into the calculator, here, I'll write it down here, 10 plus square root of 68 divided by 16, and then 10 minus, square root of 68 minus, or over 16. Okay, so I'm going to pause and get my calculator app. Okay, here's my fancy scientific, or actually graphing calculator app. So if you have a scientific calculator or the Alex calculator, you can type this in the same way. So for the 10 plus square root of 68, make sure you put that in parentheses, or ensure that it's kind of all in the top of your fraction after you've got the whole thing in there. So 10 plus second square root 68, and then I have to arrow out of this, close parentheses, and divide by 16. So if you leave off the parentheses, it's going to be incorrect. In the Alex calculator, though, I can't remember. It might look a little different, where it actually puts the whole thing in the fraction, and you don't need parentheses. So rounding to the 10th place, this would be just 1.1. So 1.1 second. So that's going to be one of our answers. Oops. 1.1 seconds. I don't know. Is that plural? And then we need to do same thing, but with a minus sign. I'm going to actually do second, and then the enter button, if I do the second, it puts in what I just typed in, and so I can arrow back to where the plus sign is and make it a minus sign. So it's just a little quicker. So then rounding to the nearest tenth, looks like it'll be still 0.1. Okay, so 0.1. So both of these answers are, I guess that should just be second. Anyway, both of these answers are positive, so we would include both of them. And so basically we've got that this arrow started at a height of 6 feet above the ground, and so maybe here's 8. This is not drawn to scale. So there's 8. And so it starts here, and it goes up. So there's our 0.1. And then comes back down. Again, not drawn to scale, because it actually, I think, is very narrow. And so hits 8 feet again at 1.1. So what goes up must come down. So that's why we have two different answers. Now, it's not always going to be the case that you get two different answers. So if the height they give you is less than the initial height, you're only going to have one positive answer. So you'd have to leave out the negative one. So part B actually demonstrates that. So part B says, how long will it take for the arrow to land? Again, how long is asking about t, right? That's the time. And so for the arrow to land, we have to realize this is implying that the height when it lands is 0, right? You're 0 feet above the ground if it's landed. So we're going to set our h formula, this guy up here, equal to 0. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 6. 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 6. By the way, be careful with t's. You might use a capital T, but do something to differentiate them from your plus signs. So I just do like a little curly T. Okay. So yet again, we have this issue with having a negative squared term. Also, all of these numbers that we see are even. So it looks like we can factor something out. We can at least factor out a 2 just to make the numbers a little smaller. All of this is optional, but I think that it's helpful to do because it makes everything a little easier to work with if we have to do quadratic formula. So I'm going to factor out negative 2, or maybe we can think of it as just dividing by negative 2. And this was Mr. Gibson's suggestion with part A as well. So we get 0 on the left, and then all our signs are going to change. And the reason I'm doing negative is because that square term is negative, and I don't like that. I get confused. So this is going to be a positive 8t squared, and then negative 10t, and then negative 3. So it looks very similar to what we had in part A, just a different c value. So I'm going to see if I can factor this one. I can't remember if it'll factor or not. But you could do the quadratic formula, even if it does factor, right? Quadratic formula works no matter what. Okay, so I'm going to try factoring, though. AC. So A times C would be 8 times negative 3, or negative 24. And I want two numbers then that multiply to negative 24 and add to negative 10. So since my product is negative, the two numbers are going to be opposite signs. Since my sum is also negative, the larger of my magic numbers is going to be negative. Okay, so when I'm listing out factors of 24, negative 24, I'm going to keep the negative on the larger factor. So for example, 1 times 24, I'm going to make it 1 and negative 24. Now if I add those together, I get negative 23. That is not going to work. Okay, how about 2 times 12? So 2 times negative 12. If I add these together, ooh, that works. 2 plus negative 12 is negative 10. So there are my numbers. So that also means this is going to factor. I'm going to be able to actually do this problem this way. So 0 equals 8t squared oh, sorry. Let's do plus 2 first. I don't know. What is wrong with me? It doesn't matter. But plus 2t minus 12t, you could switch it. And then minus 3. Okay, so 8t squared and 2t, I can factor 2t out and get 4t squared plus 1. No, Catherine. This would be a 4t, right? I think I need a nap. Okay, 4t plus 1. Okay, and then I think I can factor negative 3 out of the second pair. So you always want to match the sign. So since this is a negative in the middle, I need to factor something negative out. And it looks like 3 is what's common. So I will get 4t plus 1. Right? If I didn't factor the negative out, I'd have some negatives in here. It wouldn't match. That's not good. So we want the parentheses to match. So then finally 0 equals 4t plus 1. And then 2t minus 3. Okay, so we have two factors to set equal to 0. So two potential answers. 4t plus 1 equals 0, comma, 2t minus 3 equals 0. So 4t equals negative 1 divided by 4. And then t equals negative 1/4. Okay, that's not going to be a possibility. We're not going back in time with this arrow. So as soon as you realize something's going to end up being a negative answer with a word problem, most likely that doesn't make sense. And so you can kind of just cross it out. But I think this one's going to work out okay. So 2t minus 3 equals 0. So then 2t equals 3 and t equals 3 halves. And so probably 3 halves is fine to type in for your answer, or you could put 1.5. I'll write it as 1.5 since we wrote our part A answers as decimals. So we now know that this arrow, we kind of go over here where I was drawing this. So again, not drawn to scale, but we know this arrow actually hits the ground after 1.5 seconds. So maybe I can just draw this a little bit better. So maybe this is 0.1, and then this is 1.1, and then maybe 1.5 would be about there. And so again, I'm still not going to draw it to scale, but if this is where it starts, from part A, we know where it's at 8. So we don't know how high it goes, but we know these points. We figured this out so far. Stop it. So something kind of like this is the trajectory of this arrow. But since I scaled my x is so much bigger than my y's, it actually would be a much skinnier go up and come down like that. Anyway, so if a problem does not specify a method, like it doesn't say use the quadratic formula, use completing the square, you can use whatever method you think is going to be easiest for you. Just show your work and make sure that you're doing algebra, right? If you have a graphing calculator, don't just look at a graph or something.